Well, I'm here in Philadelphia, and I'm joined across the Atlantic Ocean by Christie Williamson, who's in Glasgow. Hey, Christie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Yeah.
This is fun. We're going to spend 5 minutes talking about a poem by Wallace Stevens called Anecdote of the Jar. I'll read it, and then just say what first comes to your mind about this poem. It's in 3 stanzas. I placed a jar in Tennessee, and round it was upon a hill. It made the slovenly wilderness surround that hill. The wilderness rose up to it and sprawled around, no longer wild. The jar was round upon the ground and tall and of a port in air. It took dominion everywhere. The jar was gray and bare. It did not give of bird or bush like nothing else in Tennessee. Well, how is it possible, Christie, for a jar to create, to hedge, to de-wild the wilderness? How is that possible?
It's well, I mean, there are quite a few moments in that poem where things don't make the normal kind of sense that you'd expect things to make.
Right.
Maybe you would expect them to make less sense in a poem.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe that's kind of the point of poetry. But yeah, the wilderness rose up to it and sprawled around, no longer wild. If it's no longer wild, then how's it wilderness?
Yeah. So what is the relationship between a jar and the wilderness, natural wilderness? I mean, typically, if a pristine wilderness doesn't have jars in it, what is it about the jar?
Well, I mean, there is that unexpected, unnatural juxtaposition, which, and if you were to describe that, you would say it's jarring.
Oh, there's an implicit pun there. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Let's just say that the jar, so counterintuitively or nonsensically, as you put it, the jar can't take dominion. Really what happens is the reverse. The wilderness, if you leave the jar long enough, the green, the vines and the trees and the bushes will grow up and consume that jar, disappear that jar. But instead, the jar takes dominion. So the jar seems to be a form, an aesthetic form. Is he saying something about... He's not a nature poet.
No.
Why is he? Why does this poem suggest that he's not a nature poet?
The jar.
He's pro-jar, isn't he?
He is pro-jar. Yeah, no, he definitely is celebrating the jar. He finds the wilderness slovenly.
Exactly. The jar is pristine. It's gray and bare. It's like a pure modern form. It's like a little modern sculpture or something. It's kind of like about modernist hegemony or something like that. The last 2 lines, the jar is gray and bare, but it did not give of, which is funny American idiom, it did not give of bird or bush. In other words, it didn't contribute to nature like nothing else in Tennessee. So if this is it's an anecdote, so it's kind of allegorical about poetry and nature. Can you write a poem? And you're kind of a nature poet in some ways yourself. Okay.
Well, I don't really think of myself as that, but then I think, but yeah, it does appear, it does come in. Yeah. And I think that's
if this is an anecdote or an allegory of the relationship between a poem, which is a form, and the natural world. What lesson could we learn from it? What lesson do you learn from it as a poet? Is poetry that powerful?
As powerful as a jar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it at its best, definitely. I think it is. I think it is. Uh, it's very it's very very dense poem.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and it does a lot. In three kind of quite 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 not too experimental stanzas. They're quite uniform.
Yes, except that the first one, which should be rhyming A B, it should be A B A B, or anyway, the second and fourth lines are the same word. They're rhymes, but they're the same word. So he's hinting at a certain violation there.
Yeah.
But the poem is like that jar. It really is fairly formal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, what if you place this poem in Tennessee? I mean, I think this is a somewhat wry and smiley anecdote about the power of aesthetics. Aesthetics overcome nature every time because the people who produce the aesthetics are humans. You know, I mean, this is not a poem that probably wears well in this era of eco-poets and poets who would like us to think about our mutually reinforcing relationship with animals and plants.
Sure,
This seems to be a poem that's running over.
It's counter to that. It's counter to that, or their counter to where this poem is coming from,
Right?
Perhaps more, more accurately.
Let's each take a turn trying to understand the word dominion, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So it took dominion everywhere. Dominion is a very powerful word, which to me brings up the whole issue of imperialism. And you know, the dominion is a word. It's a political word. It's a word from territorial acquisition, and also from kingship.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
Right. So
I tend to think of it as quite a theological word.
There you go. All right. Well, let me do my colonial reading. Then you can read your theological reading. Does that sound good?
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great.
So it took dominion everywhere. This is a conquering. This is Tennessee, which is wilderness, and then Stevens shows up, a modernist poet, and puts his jar poem there and says, "No more wilderness. I'm doing my modernist subjectivity thing on this place." Right, and that is a kind of takeover. You and I were thinking we would talk about a Robert Frost poem. Nobody knows that except us because we didn't do it. But Frost would take a different point of view. Frost is much more, at least overtly, deferential to nature, whereas Stevens is like, there is no nature unless I put my jar there. There is no Tennessee. There is no territory. What is Tennessee after all? All right. Well, you do your spiritual reading, and then we'll have to stop.
Yeah. So dominion is I think it's possibly in the it's not in the Lord's Prayer, but I think it's in the benediction in the Presbyterian Church of Scotland service that I grew up with. We ascribe to you all dominion, majesty, and power. And that was how. And I think it is the word that does. I'm not going to pretend to know the etymology of it off pat, but it does have something over some sort of connection to in Spanish, domingo is
Sure.
what state.
Sure.
So it's got some sort of divinity, which is a similar concept to your colonial reading, that it is separate and above and superior to everywhere.
We ended up with the same reading. the poem is basically saying, I am of the religion of aesthetic form. Yeah, and once I bestow upon a slovenly place like Tennessee, which could use some conversion to aesthetic form, I bless it, and now it is totally taken over by the modern poem. You know, you can't get away.
Yeah.
Christie, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Al.
Okay.
Brilliant.
All
Cheers.
Right. Cheers.
If you liked this episode, watch another and subscribe.
And join us for ModPo, a free and open course at modpo.org.